My younger sister started dating my childhood friend, Bruno. She told Bruno I bullied her at school. That day, after class, Bruno and his friends cornered me in an alley. In a cold tone, he said, "You need to learn your lesson." In the struggle, I hit my head and lost my memory. When I woke up, a stranger was sitting by my bedside. "Don't remember me?" He smiled gently, his hand brushing against my lips. "Didn't you say you liked your brother the most? Why are you looking at me with such unfamiliar eyes?" Chapter 1. I was dragged all the way to the clearing behind the library. 7 or 8 people stood in front of me. Leading them was Bruno, the one I had a crush on for years. "What are you trying to do?" I looked at him calmly. "Julia." Bruno tilted his head and lit a cigarette. "Luna is your sister. Your biological sister. And you brought people to bully her? What do you think you're doing?" I tugged at my lips. "And you just believe her?" Bruno looked up. Our eyes met. And suddenly he reached out and grabbed my neck. With one hand, he pinned me against the wall behind me. "Do you think she'd slap herself a few times? Why are you still acting tough?" "Huh?" With the cigarette between his lips. His words were muffled. But even so, I could clearly feel his seething anger. "Bruno, are you here to stand up for her now?" Bruno suddenly let go of me. "My girlfriend got bullied, and I can't stand up for her." A few girls standing beside him stepped forward and held me down. One of them raised her hand and slapped me. I was completely unable to move, left only to let them do as they wished. Bruno looked down at me with an indifferent gaze. "Julia, you need to learn your lesson," I shouted at him, breaking down. "Bruno, you've known me for so many years. Have I ever bullied anyone?" The boy remained unmoved. He casually flicked the ash off his cigarette. "Luna said you were upset because the last spot for the school's piano competition went to her." After saying that, he sneered again. "I can't just not believe my girlfriend, can I?" Any further arguments were meaningless. To Bruno, all my words were just excuses. One slap after another landed on me. I gritted my teeth and stayed silent. "Stop." The hands holding me down loosened and let go. Bruno walked over and brushed the hair away from my face. "Julia, you weren't like this before. Can you be a little more obedient in the future?" His eyes were dark. "I really despise the way you resist me." Chapter 2. Bruno wasn't always like this. He used to be laid back. But he was good to me. When it came to my younger sister Luna, he was always indifferent. It seemed like everything changed that day. After Bruno and I had a fight and stopped talking, he changed, coming back so late. "Who were you out with?" Bruno was standing outside my dorm, apparently waiting for a long time. "It was a club dinner. There were a lot of people." He gave a faint smile. "Why is it that every time you finish these dinners, it's always that senior who brings you back?" His questioning tone was sharp. "Bruno, can you not do this every single time? What are you even thinking about?" Whenever I spent a lot of time with any guy, Bruno would always have this grim look, interrogating me like I was a suspect. He stared at me silently for a few seconds, then nodded and let out a light laugh. "Fine. I guess I'm just meddling." From that day, Bruno and I entered a cold war. A week later, I gave in. I decided to approach him first to explain. The reason I felt comfortable with that senior taking me home was because he and I had the same orientation. But when I got to his building, I happened to see Luna tiptoeing to kiss him on the lips. Bruno had his hands in his pockets, making no move to avoid it. I froze, my foot stepping back unconsciously, kicking a flower pot. The noise was loud. It made both of them turn their heads simultaneously. "Sis." Luna blushed, standing there helplessly. Bruno just raised an eyebrow indifferently. "Did you come to see me?" "You too." My dry lips moved, and it took a while to make a sound. Luna went to hold Bruno's hand. "Bruno and I are together now." She smiled shyly. "Sis, you're the first to know." Chapter 3. Bruno knew I liked him. One time, I overheard him talking with his friends. "Bro, that little childhood friend of yours, Julia, she likes you, right?" He laughed lazily. "Yeah, I knew it. The love in her eyes when she looks at you couldn't be more obvious." "Hey bro, do you like her?" Bruno just smiled without answering. Now I already know his answer. Luna started openly dating Bruno. He was blatantly partial to her. One day, when Luna and I were having lunch in the cafeteria, Bruno joined us midway. Hands. He gently patted Luna's hand, which was sticky with sauce. His tone was indulgent yet helpless. How did you get sauce all over your hands just peeling shrimp? Are you silly? Luna pouted, whining. But I want to eat them. Bruno scoffed lightly. This kind of thing, when you have a boyfriend, you can let your boyfriend do it. I lowered my head even more, my eyes welling up slightly. I ate quietly, just wanting to finish quickly without drawing their attention. But Luna, as usual, was undeterred. Even with Bruno right there, she had no qualms about sharing every detail of their love life with me. Sis, Bruno is so sweet. So this is what he's like in a relationship. Huh? Before, when I saw him with you, he didn't seem gentle at all. I quickly adjusted my emotions and shoveled the last bite of food into my mouth. Because you're his girlfriend, I said lightly, standing up with my tray. Right. Luna seemed completely oblivious, smiling innocently. After all, you and Bruno are just friends. I forced a smile, said I'm done, and left. Behind me were their casual conversations. Right, Bruno? Yeah, I only like you. All right? Now hurry and eat the shrimp before they get cold. I couldn't help but quicken my pace. Luna's probing couldn't have been more obvious. She had witnessed my close interactions with Bruno. Now, doing all this in front of me was just to prove how much Bruno liked her. Luna and I happened to share the same birthday. The next time I saw Bruno was on our birthday. He came to my house to pick up Luna. Happy birthday. Bruno gently patted her head. I was about to quietly slip away when Luna called out to me. Bruno, it's also my sister's birthday today. You should wish her a happy birthday too. I saw Bruno pause noticeably. Clearly, he had forgotten. He then looked at me with a complex expression. I couldn't help but feel awkward. Embarrassment spreading through me. You guys are dating. Don't bring me into it. I forced a helpless smile to hide my shame, even though I had occasionally imagined it before. Maybe Bruno was only with Luna out of spite. At this moment, I had to admit it. He really had fallen in love with Luna. Chapter 4. Luna's guard against me never really went away. I went camping in the mountains with friends, and we got separated by accident. Before I could find my way down, the sky suddenly darkened. A torrential rain began, and I lost cell service. But I remembered seeing some houses halfway up the mountain earlier. Just as I was about to head there, Luna and Bruno found me. Sis! I heard a faint voice in the distance and stopped in my tracks. Luna ran towards me, with Bruno following behind. 2 or 3 meters away from me, Luna fell. She twisted her left ankle. Bruno and I both rushed to her side. Are you okay, Luna? Bruno and I spoke at the same time. My foot hurts. Bruno. Tears mixed with rain on Luna's face. She looked miserable and pitiful. Bruno's eyes filled with concern. And he spoke gently. I'll carry you down the mountain. Be good and bear with it. I helped Luna climb onto Bruno's back. Go slowly. As soon as I spoke, Bruno cut me off coldly. He took 2 steps back with Luna on his back, looking annoyed. Julia, can you learn not to be a burden to others? If it wasn't for you, would Luna be hurt? I froze for a moment. Behind him, Luna tugged on his sleeve. All right. Stop talking. I barely regained my composure and lowered my eyes. Sorry for worrying you. The rest of the way down the mountain was silent. My calf had been accidentally scratched while I was looking for a way down. It was still bleeding. When Bruno took Luna to the hospital, I decided to get my wound treated too. Sis, are you hurt too? Luna looked at my calf. Bruno paused, stopped carrying Luna, and turned to follow her gaze. His expression darkened even more. You got hurt and didn't say anything? As he spoke, he walked towards me, intending to carry me to the car. I silently avoided his hand. It's just a small wound. It's fine. Can you just listen for once, Julia? Let me see if there's an infection. It seemed like Bruno forgot Luna was there, squatting in front of me. Really? There's no need. I avoided him. I'll wait for you in the car. As I turned, I met Luna's pale face. Maybe it was from that moment on that she started distancing herself from me. To keep Bruno and me from getting any closer, she even went as far as to accuse me of bullying her. Chapter 5. But this time, I wasn't planning to put up with her. I came home with my face swollen and red, and Luna was leaning against the second-floor railing, sipping milk tea. When she looked at me, her innocent eyes blinked. My anger shot to its peak in an instant. I walked upstairs, grabbed her by the shoulder, and slapped her across the face without holding back. "Weren't you the one who said I had someone beat you up?" I tugged at the corner of my lips. "Then I'd be letting down those slaps I got if I don't make that accusation true." "Sis." Luna barely said a word before I slapped her again. Bruno arrived at my house before me. He was coming out of Luna's room and saw everything. He immediately pulled my hand away. "Julia!" His voice was icy. "Don't push me to hit you." I let out a cold laugh, just about to slap him back, but he grabbed my wrist. I struggled desperately. Bruno's other hand came to hold me as well. In the chaos, a pair of hands pushed my back. I tumbled down the stairs in front of me. "Julia!" Bruno roared. My head hit the sharp corner of a cabinet. My mind went foggy. Before I completely lost consciousness, I saw the front door open. A familiar figure ran towards me. It seemed to be Ethan, back from a 2-month business trip. My stepbrother. Chapter 6. When I groggily woke up, it was already late. 2 people were standing by my bed, talking. The patient has a blood clot in her brain. After waking up, she may experience temporary amnesia and other symptoms. All right. My eyelids were so heavy that I couldn't open them, and I drifted back to sleep. The second time I woke up, it hadn't been long. The sky outside was still dark. A stranger was sitting by my bedside. "Does your head still hurt?" His voice was very gentle. I looked at him and shook my head. Then, belatedly, I realized that I didn't remember anything. I could only ask the person in front of me straightforwardly. "I think I've lost my memory. Who are you?" He didn't show any sign of surprise. Instead, he had a slight smile. The man touched my lips gently with his hand. "I'm your boyfriend." He knew I didn't believe him, so he handed me my phone. Then he used his own phone to send me a WeChat message. I had him saved as Ethan. "Why is our chat history empty?" "Because you were afraid of others finding out about us, so you always deleted it," Ethan replied smoothly. I looked at my phone, half believing, half doubting. I scrolled through my old conversations with other people. I began to get a vague understanding of my identity, and I also learned that Ethan was my stepbrother. I looked up at him, puzzled. "But aren't we siblings by name?" He leaned closer to me, his thumb brushing my cheek. There wasn't a hint of hesitation in his gaze. "That's why we've always been secretly." "Secretly what?" Ethan's eyes followed his words downward. "Secretly dating. Secretly kissing. Secretly doing." The door was suddenly pushed open, interrupting Ethan. "Julia." I had a photo of this person on my phone. It was Bruno, my sister Luna's boyfriend. "Julia's body hasn't recovered yet. Could you come back to see her in a while?" Ethan spoke in a polite manner, but Bruno acted like he didn't hear and took another step towards me. Ethan's smile didn't change. The next moment, 2 bodyguards in suits entered the room. After glancing at Ethan, they dragged Bruno out. I inexplicably withdrew my gaze and focused on the question at hand. I looked at Ethan again. "Are we really boyfriend and girlfriend?" "Of course. If you don't believe me, we can take our time to get used to it, okay?" The man's voice was gentle. "Julia, I'll help you slowly remember the feeling of liking me." He gently cupped my cheek with his long fingers. I instinctively rubbed against it. "Okay." Chapter 7. After I was discharged, Ethan took me to his private villa. It was just before summer break. Ethan simply asked for leave on my behalf, saying I could make up exams after the holidays. In the parking lot, after getting out of the car, Ethan picked me up in his arms to take me to the elevator. He lowered his gaze to look at me and spoke gently. "Is holding you like this uncomfortable?" During my hospital stay, Ethan's meticulous care had made me mostly desensitized to his presence. I felt my ears heat up a bit. "It's fine," I answered softly. The man smiled and adjusted his hold on me. My chin rested on his shoulder, and I felt inexplicably safe. Just as the elevator doors were closing, a hand blocked them. Julia. It was Bruno, who had rushed over, his black hair slightly damp with sweat. Did you just agree to live with him so easily? There was a hint of anger in his eyes. I didn't understand why my sister's boyfriend was always pestering me, but it was certainly nothing good. Moreover, Ethan had shown me the footage from the house's security camera. From that angle, it was clear that it was him and my biological sister who had pushed me down the stairs. So when I looked at Bruno again, there was a bit of hostility in my gaze. What does it have to do with you? My biological father and stepmother were vacationing in the southern hemisphere. Ethan was the only one who had taken care of me during my hospitalization. It naturally made him the only person I trusted after losing my memory. Do you really not remember me? Bruno reached out, trying to pull me. Obviously, I've always been the closest person to you. His dry, hoarse voice made him seem a bit pathetic. I didn't believe him, and inexplicably, I felt a deep aversion to him. The hand that rested on Ethan's chest withdrew a bit. Brother. I frowned and looked at my boyfriend, who hadn't spoken a word until now. Why aren't you getting rid of him? Letting someone pester your girlfriend like this? I pursed my lips, disapprovingly watching him. This makes me think you're a bit spineless. My serious tone, I thought, would provoke some discontent from Ethan, but he just chuckled, as if agreeing with me. My mistake. He rubbed the back of my head and pulled me into his embrace. In the darkness, the sounds around me became even clearer. Didn't I tell you last time not to disturb her rest? Ethan seemed to be gently inquiring. Bruno, rebellious, smirked without humor. Do I need you to tell me? You better put Julia down right now. The next second, through the gap in the elevator doors, I saw Ethan's bodyguards silently appear again. One of them kicked Bruno to the ground, making him kneel in front of Ethan. Bruno gritted his teeth. You son of a... Ethan placed his hand over my exposed ear, but I could still faintly hear. His voice was still gentle, but it carried an undeniable authority. He was like a noble judge, elegantly passing judgment on a criminal. I don't like people bothering Julia, just like you wouldn't want your sister in Burlington to mysteriously disappear, right? Bruno instantly fell silent. This is my last warning to you. Without waiting for a response, Ethan carried me back into the elevator. Behind us, I could hear sounds of kicking and punching. Threatening me won't work. I'll wait for the day Julia remembers. Sooner or later we'll be together again. Don't forget. Julia before the amnesia didn't even. The rest of his words were cut off, fading into the background. But before I could dwell on it, another pressing issue took my attention away. Were we really going to live together? I remembered Ethan's earlier words, hesitating to bring it up, but he just carried me directly into a room. You'll sleep here, he said, placing me on the edge of the bed. It was a very girly bedroom. He knew I hadn't regained my memories, so he didn't force me to live with him. He was truly respectful of me. Watching his back, my heart seemed to skip a beat. Ethan remembered what I liked and didn't like to eat, what I was allergic to, and even my little habits. I started to gradually believe that we really were a couple. The main reason being, I realized I was beginning to like him just a little. Chapter 8. Ethan was very busy, but no matter how busy he was, he always made time to take me out to relax, and come home to have dinner with me. Then, late at night, he would work in the study. I always felt like I should do something for him. So, I followed an online recipe and learned to make soup for Ethan. As I was focusing on adding salt, a pair of arms wrapped around my waist. Making soup? His breath tickled my ear. A hint of warmth spread around my ear. Who are you making it for? I felt like he was asking the obvious, but I still answered seriously. For you. Good girl. He wrapped himself around me from behind. His lips seemed to hover right by my ear, almost but not quite touching. Does holding you like this make you uncomfortable? No. In fact, I wanted to say that it seemed like, no matter how he held me, I had already gotten used to it. Ethan stopped there that day. I didn't expect that our next step forward would come from me. It was the first rainy day since I lost my memory. The cold night wind, accompanied by thunder, made me a little scared. I was wearing a nightgown when I knocked on Ethan's door. "What's wrong?" I looked up, a bit embarrassed. "Can I sleep with you?" "I'm a little scared." Ethan looked down at me and didn't answer immediately. I felt a bit awkward. Aren't we a couple? Was this suggestion difficult for him to decide on? He had even talked about doing things secretly before. As I sank deeper into my thoughts, suddenly, I was picked up by a pair of hands around my waist. Ethan lifted me, holding me face to face in his arms. "Okay." He looked into my eyes and spoke softly, seeing that there was almost a person's width of distance between us. I couldn't help but be puzzled. My boyfriend seemed a bit too gentlemanly. A sudden clap of thunder echoed. I jumped and hid in Ethan's embrace. "Brother, don't be afraid." He soothed my back with his hand. "I'm here. Don't be scared, okay?" His voice was right by my ear, suddenly much closer. I lifted my head from his chest, my face feeling warm. "Are we really a couple? If so, why haven't you kissed me yet?" Ethan held my back, bringing me closer to him. He gripped my chin, lifting it, forcing me to meet his gaze. "Want to kiss?" I pressed my lips together, not answering. That was too blunt. Ethan's thumb brushed against my lower lip. "Do you like me now?" I thought for a moment, then nodded slightly. "I think I do." He smiled and kissed me slowly. At first, it was just rubbing against my lips, nibbling gently, until I couldn't help but let out a soft sound. And then my lips were pried open. He took over the air in my mouth. At some point, he had turned on top of me. He pinned down my wrists, our fingers intertwined ambiguously. He looked down at me from above. "Julia, His other hand was already at the hem of my clothes, caressing but not yet going further. "Do you want to take the next step?" Chapter 9. What's the next step? I didn't respond immediately. Still slightly panting, the man's fingers had already slipped under my shirt, rubbing my waist. There was desire in his eyes. Ethan leaned down, intentionally letting me feel it. "This is the next step." This was probably the warmest spot on this bed, even through 2 layers of fabric. "Are you scared?" Ethan nibbled on my earlobe. I shivered instinctively, struggling to find my words. Luckily, Ethan didn't push me, and he quickly pulled away. "You should sleep." He patted my head and went straight into the bathroom. I've lost my memory, but I'm not stupid. Just one door away. I knew what he was doing. The sound from the bathroom stimulated my eardrums, keeping me more awake. By the time Ethan lay down next to me, carrying a chill from the bath, I still wasn't sleepy at all. "Brother." I felt a little shy, but I moved a bit closer. "Can we kiss a little longer?" I asked him, blushing. Ethan turned his head slightly, raising an eyebrow. I thought kissing him felt so comfortable, like teasing a peeled lychee with my lips. "How should we kiss?" He moved closer, unaffected. "Like just now?" I fought back the embarrassment that made me want to hide under the covers, and nodded. Ethan placed his hands on either side of my head and leaned down for a light kiss. "Not like that." I grew a bit anxious. He kissed along the corner of my lips, his voice murmuring near them. "What was it like?" "Julia, show your brother." I knew he was doing it on purpose, but his coaxing tone, in such an already intimate atmosphere, had me a little dizzy. I wrapped my arms around his neck impulsively, lifted slightly, searching for his lips, just like he had earlier. Opened my mouth, pried his lips open, just when I was still wanting more. Ethan let go of me. "Julia." His breath was heavy. I stared at his lips. I leaned in again. "You should sleep." Ethan blocked my kiss, his hand pressing my shoulder to stop me. I pressed my lips together, answering softly, "All right." I didn't push it further. Otherwise, he'd have to go into the bathroom for the 3rd time tonight. Chapter 10. That day was the first time I saw Luna since I woke up, even though I knew she was the one who pushed me down. But my injuries hadn't fully healed yet, and I was worried I didn't have enough strength. So I wasn't in a rush to settle accounts with her. Unexpectedly, she took the initiative to come find me. At that time, I was panting a little, climbing onto Ethan's lap, straddling him. "Brother." I pulled away his pad and tossed it aside. We haven't kissed today. I seriously reminded him of his duties as a boyfriend. Not that I was particularly eager to kiss him. Ethan leaned back on the sofa, a lazy look in his eyes. Do it yourself. His hands only rested on my waist. No intention at all of initiating a kiss. All right then. I only hesitated for a second before leaning down to bite his lips. Gently, okay? I backed away slightly, looking at him apologetically. Did I hurt you? A barely noticeable smile appeared at the corner of his lips. His hand slid to my back and suddenly pressed down. Caught off guard, I fell onto his chest. A little. Yeah, he said. I apologized, then climbed onto his shoulders with both hands, leaning gently toward his lips. Julia! A sharp female voice interrupted the kiss. I followed the sound. Luna was standing by the window, eyes filled with rage. Perfect timing. I wanted to see her too. Sister, can you explain to me why you're living with my brother? Luna took a step closer to me, seeming to suppress her anger. I remember you always kept your distance from him before. I was baffled. Because he's my boyfriend. He's lying to you. Luna sneered. You never liked him before. At this point, I still didn't understand why she was trying so hard to clear things up between Ethan and me. I turned to look at Ethan. He was just sitting on the sofa, calmly watching. I turned back to Luna, returning to the main issue. This isn't for you to worry about. I just want to ask you, what were you thinking when you pushed your own sister down the stairs? She looked at me with a pale face, filled with resentment. Her lower lip was almost bitten through. Are you still going to settle accounts with me? Are you still not satisfied? Sister? The moment she looked at Ethan, tears suddenly fell. Didn't my brother get my competition eligibility revoked for you? Throughout college, I wasn't allowed to participate in any competition. All those years I practiced piano, just wasted. I blinked. So Ethan had already stood up for me. Luna walked up to Ethan, holding back her tears. Sister has known you for as long as I've known you. Why? Why do you favor her? I paused, fully realizing what was going on. It seemed Luna's feelings for Ethan weren't simple. Then what was Bruno to her? As I was still pondering this complex love square, I saw my dear sister reaching out to grab my boyfriend. I immediately stepped forward and slapped her hand away. Don't you have your own boyfriend? Stop clinging to someone else's. Then I turned back and glared at Ethan. You didn't even dodge? But he just looked at me without any emotion. Not blinking, I decided to deal with the problem in front of me first. Luna, don't think that being banned from competitions makes you some kind of victim. I was pushed down the stairs by you, hospitalized for over a month, and here you are, standing perfectly fine. I'll deal with this matter with you. Slowly, she gave a bleak smile. Whatever you want to do to me, it's just a matter of saying the word, right? He'll do anything for you. Luna looked at Ethan. She seemed to be hoping that he'd look at her, but when I followed her gaze, Ethan's eyes were still on me. She seemed to give up, tugging at the corner of her mouth self-deprecatingly as she left. Chapter 11. Don't you have something to explain? Once again, the room was left with just the two of us. I began to settle accounts with Ethan. He remained calm, but lowered his eyes, avoiding my gaze. He had the usual casual smile on his lips. She was right. I lied to you. You didn't like me at all before you lost your memory. I looked at him silently. Suddenly, I could see the disappointment hidden beneath his nonchalant tone. He wasn't even urging me to respond, as if he held no expectations of me. Before, he'd only ever hugged me, and it was always me who initiated kissing. Even the abrupt stop that night now had an explanation. Ethan didn't not want to. He was just afraid that if one day I regained my memory, I would hate him. The increasingly stifling atmosphere in the room was broken by my soft hum. Let's set that aside for now. Could you first explain something even more important to me? I forced a stiff smile, my voice cold. When Luna tried to grab you just now, why didn't you dodge? Whose boyfriend has such little sense of boundaries? He lifted his eyes slightly, meeting mine calmly. For a long moment, the breeze slipping through the window broke the darkness in his eyes. Come here. Holding a serious expression, I walked over to him. Before I could speak, I was pulled into his embrace. Ethan's slightly hoarse voice sounded in my ear. My fault. He hugged me a little tighter. I promise not to let her touch me again. Can you forgive me? I rubbed my face against his neck, hugging him back, my lower face buried in his collarbone. My voice muffled. Don't let it happen again. I get jealous. He held me in silence. I turned my head slightly and kissed his cheek. Brother, liking someone is a feeling, not a memory. Even if I remember everything, I won't stop liking you. Don't worry, okay? I lightly patted his back in reassurance. Ethan chuckled softly. He picked me up and pressed me into the sofa, resuming what Luna had interrupted earlier. His lips tangled with mine, his hand holding my neck to pull me closer. The kiss began to trail downward. Do you want to take the next step, Julia? I wrapped my arms around his neck, leaning close to his ear, whispering in reply, it's clearly you who wants to. His kiss on my neck paused. A faint smile. Yes, it's me. The next second, I was picked up from the sofa and carried to the bedroom. Chapter 12. Daytime plus the first experience. A double buff that left me with nowhere to hide. I closed my eyes tightly, not daring to look at the person above me. Open your eyes, Julia. He always has a way of making me obey. If I didn't open my eyes, I wouldn't be able to hold back my voice. Our eyes met, and desire surged. Ethan held my chin, forcing me to open my mouth and accept his kiss. This is something more interesting than just kissing. Sweat beaded across his shoulders. Don't you like it, Julia? I was already feeling dazed, like a piece of driftwood floating on the sea, swaying up and down. Sometimes it felt like gentle waves lapping, but more often, it was like the brutality of hitting a reef, the fragile piece of driftwood weaving through clusters of rocks, colliding from one reef to another. The only constant was the force. This was not the time to argue with Ethan, so I mustered the strength to answer. I like it, just as I said it. I felt myself being released after a surge of rapid currents. I was washed to shore by the current, limp, content to remain at rest, and as a piece of driftwood, I had no wish to return to the sea. But evidently, Ethan thought otherwise. He seemed to have discovered a new world. After trying from different angles, he wanted to explore different places. For instance, the balcony, the kitchen counter, and even inside the car in the parking garage. Ethan, spare me. I leaned weakly against his chest. What do you call me? His hand teasingly played with my earlobe. Brother. Ethan's hand returned to my shoulder. Just a moment more. I let out a sigh of relief. Chapter 13. Luna and Bruno broke up. As the clot in my brain dissipated, I started to slowly remember things from before. When I heard the news, I wasn't really surprised. I could see right through Luna, my younger sister. After she was born, our parents got even busier with work. She received very little love, and during her high school entrance exams, our parents happened to get divorced, putting her under double pressure. Lack of love and a warped sense of competitiveness shaped her into who she is today. Luna never truly liked Bruno. The person she had a crush on was always Ethan. That night, deep into the night, I got a call from Luna. Sister, why does everyone like you? She choked up as she expressed her grievances. Being with Bruno was also her way of conveying a message to me. So what if he's your closest childhood friend? He still likes me, subconsciously. Luna always saw me as her biggest rival and competitor. The insecurity she felt with Bruno wasn't because she was jealous. She simply didn't want Bruno to treat me better than her. To put it simply, she wanted the entire world to love her the most. Ethan liking me was completely unexpected for her. The fact that the person she had a crush on liked her biggest rival was too big of a blow. She had enough self-awareness to never consider confessing to Ethan, but I ended up being with him. Chapter 14. Brother. When Luna drunkenly called Ethan, I was sitting on his lap, playing Angry Birds on his phone. Seeing Luna's name on the screen, I went ahead and answered it. Can you only see my sister? Tell me, how am I worse than her? On the other end, the girl was tearfully complaining. And here, Ethan wasn't listening at all. He kissed down my ear while reaching into the bedside drawer. 3 more. He smiled, lightly biting my ear, his breath full of teasing. That's enough. But this time, I was slower to get into the mood. I pushed Ethan's hand away and laughed coldly into the receiver. Luna, you really take your own sister as a competitor. Impressive. There was instant silence on the other end. I was so angry at my twisted-minded sister. I was ready to launch into a lengthy lecture, but Ethan was already impatient. Are you done? He took the phone, hung up, and tossed it aside. Julia, save me first. The fire was lit and spreading. The flames raging across the wildlands needed a man-made rainstorm to quell them, until the rain subsided, and the wildlands came back to life. Except the one bringing the rain was utterly exhausted. The next morning, after only a few hours of sleep, I received a call from the hospital. Luna had driven drunk the previous night and crashed into a tree by the roadside. Not only was her license revoked, but her right leg would also likely need a cast for some time. I couldn't let go of everything Luna had done to me, but to personally push her down the stairs? I could only say I wasn't as cold-blooded as her. This car accident served as her lesson. Later, I went to the hospital to see Luna. Her gaze was clearer than before, and she didn't mention Ethan again, but her words were weak. I'm sorry, sister. I couldn't bring myself to say it's okay, so I stayed silent. Before I left, she suddenly brought up Bruno. Sister, didn't you notice? Bruno likes you. I didn't take her words to heart until I saw Bruno again. Chapter 15. Ethan was invited to support the opening of a new private shooting range by a young nobleman. I want to go too. Can you teach me how to shoot? I excitedly tugged on Ethan's sleeve. If I had known Bruno would also be there, I wouldn't have gone, nor would I have let Ethan go, only to end up in a frustrating situation. When we arrived, there were already quite a few people at the venue. Almost everyone who saw Ethan came over to greet and chat briefly. Everyone except for the guy in the distance wearing earmuffs. Bruno was blocking out everything, focused solely on aiming with his gun. Hey bro, up for a match? Ethan looked down at me. I nodded enthusiastically. I've never seen you shoot. He raised an eyebrow and agreed. Once geared up, Ethan raised his hand to aim. Everyone instinctively quieted down, holding their breath in anticipation. Bang! A bullet hole appeared on the target. Only 6 rings. Ethan smiled and put down the gun, casually toying with it. My bad. Bruno walked in from the periphery, apologizing insincerely. My hand slipped, and I shot at your target. After saying that, his gaze swept over Ethan before settling on me. Ethan hadn't even fired yet. The 6-ring shot was Bruno's, deliberately done to embarrass Ethan. Quick! Apologize to Mr. Ethan. Someone called out to Bruno. In high society, the hierarchy is more distinctly drawn. Ethan was at the top. Bruno had only just squeezed into this circle. He might have been cocky at school, but here, he was nothing. Ethan took off his headphones and went over to sit on the couch beside me. Bruno remained still. The tension gradually built. I didn't mean to. Mr. Ethan wouldn't mind such a trivial matter, would he? Bruno leaned against the railing, forcing a smile. Ethan didn't respond. In a rare move, he lit a cigarette, holding it between his fingers. He took a slow drag before smiling and speaking. My warning wasn't taken seriously. I see. Bruno scoffed. My sister's back in the country. What are you planning to use to threaten me this time? Tell me. I'm all ears. Ethan seemed to be amused by the boy's naivety. He tapped the ash from his cigarette, his gaze casually falling on the marble ashtray. Why would I threaten you? Bruno's smile slowly faded, as if unable to comprehend Ethan's composure. After putting out the rest of the cigarette, Ethan finally spoke. Press his head against the target. He didn't even specify who should do it. Someone automatically walked over to Bruno. Among this group were friends of Bruno, but none of them dared to cross Ethan. The allegiance was clear. Outnumbered, Bruno was quickly forced down onto the target. Ethan, what are you trying to do? Using my head as the target? He snarled provocatively. If you've got the guts, shoot me in the head. As soon as he said it, mocking laughter erupted around him, blatant ridicule at Bruno's foolish bravado. Brother, this version of Ethan was unfamiliar to me, and I tugged at his sleeve, calling him softly, Ethan picked up a pair of headphones and placed them on me. I'll teach you how to shoot. He pulled me over, placed the handgun in my hands, and wrapped his hands around mine from behind, lifting it, aiming right between Bruno's eyes. I couldn't help but shiver. His lips were nearly pressed against my ear. He chuckled lightly. "Don't be scared." Bruno, who was loud and defiant at first, now stood there silently, visibly nervous. The tables turned quickly. Ethan didn't rush to pull the trigger, instead looking back at Bruno. "Repeat what you just said." Bruno pursed his lips in silence. He was clearly afraid but refused to yield. Ethan's smile remained unchanged, suddenly pressing my hand to shoot above Bruno's head. The bullet skimmed his hair, piercing the target. I said, "Repeat what you just said." Ethan took the gun from my hand, aiming it straight at Bruno, gently reminding him again. The boy, pinned and unable to move, was startled back to his senses by the previous shot. Cold sweat trickled down his forehead. He pursed his lips tightly, and after a moment, reluctantly spoke up. "If you've got the guts, shoot me in the head." "Good." Ethan fired 2 more shots, the bullets grazing Bruno's cheek. Bruno didn't make a sound, but the pallor of his face showed he had been scared out of his wits. When the person holding him down suddenly released him, he staggered. His legs had gone weak. Even though he knew Ethan wouldn't actually shoot him, he feared that one stray bullet might hit him. Finding leverage to threaten others was the kind of tactic used for equals. But to Ethan, Bruno was nothing. If Ethan wanted to crush him underfoot, it would be effortless. He had absolute power. Chapter 16. The sky was getting darker. The young nobleman who organized the event had already arranged a hotel for us to rest in. I thought Bruno, after being humiliated, would have left by now. But not only did he stay, he even got the room next to ours. "Were you scared of that shot today?" Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, playing with my hand. I immediately knelt up and scooted over to his side. "No, I know you were just trying to scare Bruno. It wasn't even a real bullet. He deserved it. I think I remember he used to bully me before too." As my memories slowly returned, I recalled that Bruno had once ordered someone to slap me. I just found it thrilling. I couldn't help but feel a little excited. Ethan pinched my fingertips, a slight smile tugging at his lips. "You like thrills?" I nodded right away, ready to ask him to teach me shooting again tomorrow. But then, he picked up his freshly untied tie, looping it around my hands. "Me? ? He calmly tied my wrists. "Didn't you say you liked thrills?" "That's not quite what I meant." Worried that the hotel room wasn't soundproof, I kept biting my lip for the first part. Ethan noticed and reached out to press down on my chin. I immediately widened my eyes. "Make some noise, Julia." Of course. This was his gentle side. He was still willing to negotiate with me. When it came to this, he had his ways to make me comply, while I was floating between consciousness, hoping the room was soundproof. There was a knock on the door. My whole body stiffened. This also caused Ethan to let out a soft sigh. "Hello. Some of the other guests have reported that you seem to be disturbing their rest. If you could please." I didn't know how the hotel staff could say this so calmly, but Ethan showed no sign of embarrassment, instead cutting off the person outside. "If anyone's disturbed, let them come talk to me directly." After saying that, he ignored the door and focused back on me. "Relax." He gave me a suggestive pat. It wasn't hard to guess that the one who complained was Bruno. Normally, with his personality, he would have come over and kicked the door himself. But today, after Ethan had just put him in his place, he didn't have the guts to make a scene, so he chose another way to express his dissatisfaction. Chapter 17. High-intensity activity is truly exhausting. When Ethan went into the bathroom again, I changed clothes and went down to the 24-hour convenience store on the lower floor to buy some snacks. "Julia." I paused and turned back, looking at Bruno with caution. He pulled a smile. "It's really hard to see you. Ethan keeps too close an eye on you." "What do you want?" My back was aching, and I couldn't stand for long, much less waste time on small talk. "I know it's too late now. You've fallen in love with Ethan. Even if I wanted to help you remember the past, you wouldn't believe me." His expression was weary, his eyes dull. It seemed like since I woke up, this boy had looked more and more miserable each time I saw him. He no longer had the confident glow he used to. I remember a lot. Bruno's eyes lit up. Really? Then do you remember how we were once the closest childhood friends? I stared at him quietly and shook my head. I remember the one you liked was Luna. You were good to her, peeled shrimp for her, took her out for her birthday. I also remember you had someone slap me for her, right? Panic flashed in his eyes, and he opened his mouth as if wanting to explain something, but he couldn't find the words. Luna said you liked me. I looked at him, confused. Bruno seemed to feel that even his own feelings were shameful. It took a long while before he softly answered. Yeah, but if you liked me, why didn't you remember my birthday? And had someone hit me? It doesn't make sense. Bruno gave a self-deprecating laugh. Yeah, I'm a bastard. Julia, I know you don't believe me, but I really have always liked you. As for your sister, at first, I was with her to spite you, but she looks like you and has a completely different personality. It was like seeing another version of you, and I unknowingly liked her for a while. But when you fell down the stairs, that's when I realized that you're the one that matters most to me, even though what Ethan did to him this afternoon was quite satisfying. After hearing this, I still couldn't help slapping him again. You really are pathetic. He stood still, letting me hit him, but even touching him felt uncomfortable. Julia, I'll let you hit me, slap by slap. Just forgive me, okay? After saying this, he tried to grab my hand to hit himself with it. The first part of that proposal sounds good. Ethan appeared out of nowhere. His bodyguard stopped Bruno's action. You asked for this yourself. There was satisfaction in Ethan's eyes. Before Bruno could react, he was slapped hard by the bodyguard. A 6-foot-tall bodyguard with a solid frame, his slap was worlds apart from mine. Ouch. It looked really painful. I blinked and looked away. The man in front of me hadn't even dried his hair, the black strands at his forehead still slightly damp, just like an hour ago when his intensity had caused a bit of sweat at his temples. My back is sore. Carry me back. I held out my hands to him. He gently teased. Your back's sore, but you can still stand here and chat for this long? Fine. I got caught because of Bruno. I froze and started to withdraw my hands, but Ethan picked me up. Again. I was sitting in the crook of his arm. I wrapped my arms around his neck and explained earnestly. He stopped me, wouldn't let me leave. I'm not lying. My back really hurts. If you want to do anything else, it might break. Ethan ignored my threat. He demonstrated physically that my back indeed hadn't broken. Didn't you go downstairs to buy snacks earlier? With the lights flickering before my eyes, I nodded instinctively. There was a rustling sound beside my ear. Then, I was lifted to sit upright. Weren't you hungry? Ethan tore off a piece of bread and fed it to me. Was he feeding me now to indirectly tell me that this would be a long night and I needed to replenish my energy? I opened my mouth and took a bite. At that moment, my hatred for Bruno reached its peak. Julia. I felt Ethan's gaze on me, but I was too tired to even lift my eyelids. You sure can eat, he commented softly. With all the time I'd spent with Ethan, I immediately understood he might mean something else. Chewing the bread, I idly recalled some memories. When I was 17, Bruno and I had a fight by the roadside. The sun had already set, and he didn't even look at me, just put on his helmet and rode off on his motorbike. I was left walking alone along the roadside in the suburbs. There wasn't even a car I could hail nearby. Luna was still at school, so I had no choice but to call Ethan. Brother, could you send someone to pick me up? I politely asked my stepbrother, whom I barely knew. Are you alone? Yeah. Send me your location. Okay. Thanks, brother. Half an hour later, a black car stopped in front of me, but it was Ethan who got out of the car. I didn't expect him to come in person. After all, my ABC stepmother always nagged about how busy Ethan was. Back then, just like now, it was early spring. The chilly wind still carried a strong bite of cold, probably because I had been out in the wind too long. I started feeling dizzy shortly after sitting in the passenger seat. I drifted off into a sleepy haze. After that, Ethan stopped the car and carried me out from the passenger seat. My eyes wouldn't open, and my voice was faint. Thanks, brother. Keep sleeping. Okay. Before the words left my mouth, I was asleep again. That wasn't the first time Ethan helped clean up my mess. I think everyone's feelings can be traced. If you look closely enough, even someone as reserved as Ethan. Slowly, I came back to the present. I raised my hand to wrap it around the shoulders of the man above me. Ethan. I love you. He bit my earlobe. I love you too. With that, everything came to a satisfying end. At this moment, I suddenly felt that maybe this memory loss wasn't entirely a bad thing. That day, when I woke up from the hospital bed, on an early spring night, I heard the first lie. I'm your boyfriend. And me believing it. That's how this story began.